Hello, and welcome to CNET's 2023 election coverage. I'm Jeff Rushton of StateCollege.com, and today we're profiling the race for the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors. With me now is Democratic Ward 1 candidate Matthew Heller. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Mr. Rushton. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you here. So Matt, to start out, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, of course. I've been a resident in Ferguson Township, Pine Grove Mills specifically, for nearly 17 years right now. My wife and our family have made it home here. A little bit about me. I'm also retired Air National Guard, so I've had almost 20 years in the Air National Guard. I've retired out of there. One of the things that I'm hoping to bring to the table is really the three core values, and folks may have heard me talk about that in the first interview that we did earlier in the spring, which are the core values that we instill in the Air Force are integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And for me, running for this position, it's really that second, service before self, that I'm hoping to then, bring an opportunity to bring integrity as well as the commitment to the folks in Ferguson going forward here. So, been a long-time resident, love it here in Ferguson Township, Pine Grove Mills, and before running for this office and being appointed in July, I was also the chair of the Pine Grove Mills Small Area Planning Committee, and that was a great experience, working with local government officials as well as citizens to figure out what do we want Pine Grove Mills to be as we go forward and as we continue to grow. Preserving the past, planning the future, right? That's what we like to say there. So between that experience and everything else and, enjoying the township, I've decided to go ahead and run for the office.
Right. What do you think are the biggest challenges facing Ferguson Township right now, and are any of them, specific to or unique to Ward 1?
Great questions. I would say the one thing that I continue to hear as we do coffee and conversations or engage with folks through the Board of Supervisors is open and transparent communication. What's going on? People seem to feel as though they don't have a direct line to elected officials or staff to better understand what's going on in the township. So one of the biggest things that I'd like to work on is this idea of getting the information out there, more community events, more open discussions, more coffee and conversations, really ensuring that the public, the citizens, know and have their voice at the table. Right? Because, again, as I've stated before, it's this idea that if you look at the hierarchy in the township, it all starts with the citizens. And then from there, the Board of Supervisors and staff can help get what the citizens need. So for me, it's ensuring, again, that we have open and transparent meetings, discussions, agendas, and that we get the input from citizens. So that's primarily it. Now, we hear of other things that are going on in the township. Public safety is a main concern on roads like Whitehall, where there's speeding issues, etc. It doesn't matter if you're close to State College or further out near the west end of the township. We hear about speeding concerns. We know that cyclists, motorists, as well as pedestrians sometimes don't feel safe on the roads. So that's a concern that we're hearing. And more specifically, too, we know that the potential Wawa coming in is of concerns to residents in that particular area. So I think what's unique about Ferguson, what I'm seeing, is that all of these different concerns are unique to their individual areas, but some of them do span larger things like the pedestrian and the mobility, et cetera, the work that's there. But I would say, again, those would probably be the main concerns right now.
2 years ago, the township enacted a stormwater management fee. How do you feel that's worked out so far, and is there anything that you would change about it or do differently?
If I could, I would eliminate the fee, right? That's the biggest concern right now that we're hearing from folks, is it costs too much, what are the benefits of it, et cetera. So I think as a supervisor, we have the opportunity, I know as a supervisor, we have the opportunity to take a harder look at the fee. What's appropriate, what's equitable, is a fee even necessary? Let's ask that question. And part of the approach on this is really trying to get a better understanding as to what grants and other things might be available. Now, as a supervisor presently, we are taking a hard look at the budget because stormwater is one of those things where, are you getting the Cadillac or are you going to drive the Ford Taurus? And I think we've been kind of approaching things at the township where we're going after the Cadillac programs. In other words, the programs that cost the most, that maybe have the highest yield, et cetera, to meet the requirements of the stormwater certificate. So with that, and we'll be doing this here in 2 weeks when we go over the budget, there are certain things that maybe we don't look at the Cadillac, but find smaller projects that help us get and keep our stormwater management fees low and don't take that much of a significant investment from folks in the township. So we have to take a harder look at that. And then again, expanding the conversation to find out what grants, et cetera, are available, but also working with other municipalities. So much gets done when one municipality starts collaborating with another, and then the next thing you know, the county starts agreeing and moving forward in a certain direction. We have to band together across the various townships that we have that are going through some of the same stormwater concerns to then create a better conversation in Harrisburg about what those fees mean to us and, other ways to adjust. So I think there are opportunities. I know there are opportunities to save. We just have to start taking a harder look at that.
Well, speaking of working with other municipalities, what's your view on the township's involvement and relationship with the Center Region Council of Governments, and what kind of value do you see in that regional collaboration and consolidation of services?
Yeah. Excellent question. COG is an absolute asset because they are a shared resource. So for me, it's understanding that the different municipalities don't have to have their own separate code or ordinance, group. That we have that at the COG. So when we consider the COG being kind of that shared resource, I think they're foundational to everything that we accomplish across the various municipalities, because it saves the townships when we're all buying into that common approach with the COG. And that's what they offer to us. And again, as a supervisor, we start to learn that. I've started to learn that working with Eric over at the COG to say, oh, I see how now we don't have to have our particular ordinance or, organization. We're actually buying into it with the COG. So I see them as absolutely beneficial, especially from things like public safety, where, again, it's a group of folks that truly know this stuff inside and out, that the different municipalities can rely on. So they're foundational.
Ferguson Township hasn't had a real estate tax increase since 2006. Mm-hmm. How important is it to you to continue that? And how do you balance, that desire to have no or low tax increases with, maintaining or even improving the services the township offers?
Yeah. The biggest thing right now is, no, I do not see, and I would not be a fan or even propose any tax increases. So what we have to do is be better with the money that we have and find new ways of bringing money into the township. Now, I know that that's not saying, and I'm not a proponent of this, not saying you put up high rises or anything like that, but with the Wawa and other revenue streams, looking at different ways to bring money into the township to keep those taxes low for the citizens. Because I know, like others, even when it comes time for income tax, when you look at the back of the tax forms here in State College and you say, wow, look at what we're paying in Ferguson, it's a lot. And truly, individuals, couples, families, they're already paying enough. So we have to be better stewards with the money and also ensuring that we have different revenue streams to prevent and keep taxes where they are.
You mentioned the proposed Wawa there at the corner of Atherton and Aaron Drive. And as you alluded to, the Overlook Heights residents are concerned about the traffic impacts of that. How do you, in a situation like that, go about addressing residents' concerns about the impacts, but while at the same time, understanding that the township's open for business, so to speak, and you have zoning for particular reasons?
That's a great question. The way that we've been doing it at the township is by encouraging folks in Overlook Heights or the surrounding areas to please come to the township meetings. We cannot act as a unified board if we don't have that input from the citizens. Being in the meetings, having that open discussion, what are the concerns? I encourage folks that may be listening to this, now or in the future, to please come out to those meetings to have their voices heard, because that gets the ball rolling. That helps us determine the best path forward. Something that I'm a proponent of, a full traffic study of the Overlook Heights with a potential Wawa going in. I'm a boots on the ground type of person, so I've already gone out to the site to maybe get my bearings on where things are. And I can tell you, I have a safety concern turning from North Atherton, making a left onto Aaron Drive, because in that left turn lane, if somebody is in the opposite direction turning left on Aaron Drive, you can't see because of the curve of the road. So if you're maybe thinking, oh, I can make this, nobody's there, you have 2 lanes of traffic that you cannot see effectively. So I'd also be a proponent of changing that traffic signal into a left on green arrow only, kind of what we see at the Home Depot intersection. So working with those folks, and also I've reached out to friends that are in by North Hills Country Club that now have speed humps placed on there. So I'm thinking those, what is it? I'm forgetting. It's Shamrock and thank you. Thank you. Oak Ridge then now have the speed humps installed. How's that working for them? And they informed me that because of the traffic study over Aspen, they were able to go ahead and have that. But they're also looking at other opportunities that maybe narrowing the streets if it doesn't improve. So I think we needed a comprehensive traffic study of that area. But also, yes, the township is open for business. And I know with 50 potential jobs coming to the Wawa, that's significant. But we have to make it fit in our unique context and in that area that's appropriate for those residents around it.
The township has made some changes to its workforce housing ordinance in recent years. But is there anything you think can be done to increase the stock that the township can do to increase the stock of affordable housing available within its borders? Yeah,
certainly. And with the recent ordinances that were pushed through, it's this idea that, we know workforce housing is imperative for where we are. Prices are going up, etc. So we've looked at some of the percentages of income that would require enable somebody to move into workforce housing, but also we've been thinking specifically, if we look at the Terraced Streetscapes District, if we look at that, we know residents there, we earlier said workforce housing could just be incentivizing the builders. They can go higher if they bring in workforce housing. We're working and moving away from that, where we're saying we don't want additional height. We don't want to be the high rises of Ferguson Township. So what can we do differently? And what we're proposing and where we are right now is, instead of building up with workforce housing or by incentivizing builders to build up, build wider, reducing the setbacks, etc., so that you don't have such ominous or imposing buildings in Ferguson Township. So we've looked at some of that, and again, working with builders and others to better understand what type of incentives they would need. Recently, at a Board of Supervisors meeting, I think there were 5 developers that came out, with their own opinions, but they're at the table. So again, that starts the conversation for not only the developers, but also for citizens to say, wait, developers are getting involved? What do I need to know? Let me engage with the Board of Supervisors and figure out what's going on. So yeah, again, the opportunity is always there to engage.
Okay. Well, we are out of time, so I'll give you the last few seconds here to share anything else you would like to with the voters.
Yeah, I just want to say, come out and vote. I mean, again, it's our right. It's something that we hopefully folks don't take for granted. And with citizens being at the top of the hierarchy, it's their opinions that matter for the Board of Supervisors and for staff to go ahead and implement. So please, coming out and vote, coming to Board of Supervisors meeting, getting your voice heard is an absolute imperative.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Matt.
Thank you.
We've been talking with Matthew Heller, Democratic candidate for Ward 1 Supervisor in Ferguson Township. All candidates in this race have been invited to take part in a CNET interview. Election day is Tuesday, November 7th, and you can also vote by mail. For more information, visit centercountyvotes.gov or contact the Center County Office of Elections. I'm Jeff Rushton of statecollege.com. Thanks for joining us, and please be sure to vote. Hello, and welcome to CNET's 2023 election coverage. I'm Jeff Rushton of statecollege.com, and today we're profiling the race for Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors. With me today is Republican Ward 1 candidate Ken Raney. Ken, thanks for joining us.
Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much, Jeff.
So Ken, to start, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background so people can get to know you?
Thank you. I'm a resident of Ferguson Township in Ward 1 for almost 40 years. I've lived in the township, 3 different locations in the township, but have enjoyed the opportunity to watch the township grow and change and see some good things that have happened in the township. I worked for 37 years for the Pennsylvania Holstein Association. The last 25 of those as the executive director of the association. I retired from that in September of 2020. And since I've been doing some volunteer work for my church, continue to umpire Little League Baseball and just enjoy kind of what retirement life has to do.
Great. So why are you running for Ferguson Township Supervisor?
As I've watched the township over the last few years, and a number of years ago I thought about doing it, but my job just wouldn't allow the opportunity to put the time into it. But I think as I've observed and watched, that we have a township that has always been fiscally conservative and done a good job in managing their finances. But over the last few years, we've seen things kind of tick in the wrong direction. I think they're looking at spending more money than they can take in. We've done some things as a township that maybe aren't as inviting to folks to move into the township and help us sustain that earned income tax base we need to develop programs and to keep the township moving. And I'd just like to, instead of complaining about it, let's get out and try to do something about it and join in the fray rather than look at it from the outside and not offer some ideas and hopefully some responsibility.
All right. What are some of the specific challenges that you see for the township, and are any of those unique to Ward 1?
I think the challenges I see are the earned income tax basis, how the township funds themselves. And so that means we have to have folks earning money moving in. And one of the things that the whole township has is that we have not seen that much growth over the last 5-7 years of people actually moving in. So I think we need to look at where can we maybe add tax base by adding folks in, and that might include looking at some housing opportunities. And Ward 1 is not in the growth zone, but there's some places that we could maybe look where we could get a few homes in to get, and I'm really looking and hoping that we can look for young family homes, because we don't have a lot of startup type homes in Ferguson Township, and we need those kind of homes. We need the young couples that are moving into this area, giving them an opportunity to maybe be first-time homeowners and find ways to work with established business builders and businesses that we can maybe find where we can get those first-time homeowners to maybe build and move into Ferguson Township a little bit and increase our income tax base, earned income tax base, and maybe be able to continue to offer the services that they're used to having.
All right. A few things you've touched on that I'd like to get into a little further. One of them is, residential, and specifically, the township has done some things to improve its affordable housing ordinance. Are there things you think can be done further to improve or expand the affordable housing stock in the township?
Again, that's an area that you need to work. You need to think outside the box. We need to talk with builders. We can't just, as a township board of supervisors, say we want this, and this to happen. You need to get the players involved who can make this, and this happen. And simply by saying an ordinance that we're going to have workforce housing doesn't offer that opportunity until you've worked with the folks who can make that affordable housing, or workforce housing, or any housing or business available. And I don't think we've done a good enough job in pre-planning, so to speak, in inviting folks to the table to say we need to talk about this before we come up with an ordinance. We need to know what the ordinance, how we can make that ordinance work for getting folks into homes, but also the folks that are going to build them be able to build them in a good manner and still be profitable, because if they're not going to come to the township to build if they can't make a few dollars on it too. And that's, the bottom line is everybody needs to make a buck.
Right. And you mentioned the township historically has been fiscally conservative, and it hasn't had a real estate tax increase since 2006. How important is it to you to continue that? And how do you prioritize when it might come to either a tax increase or reducing a service or not adding a service you think is important?
I think in this economic time we are in, the last thing you want to do is raise anybody's taxes. So that would be the lowest common denominator for me to even talk about that. I think you look at the services you presently have, what are being used and what are not. There's things that are being done maybe that aren't necessary. So we need to look at those. We need to look at where our township's staffing itself. We're adding staff, trying to add some staff. Maybe we don't need to add as much staff as we have. Our numbers in the township residents have not changed much. So do we need to go from 64 to potentially 80 staff members? That's something you need to look at. We need to, we need to look at that tax base. If we can increase the earned income tax base a little bit, then yeah, you can do some other programs. You can maybe add some things. But until you can control and really look at your spending habits and keep those, so I'm sure not going out into Ward 1 and say we need to raise taxes, because I might as well just walk out the door here right now, because that's not going to sit very well with anybody. And it really won't sit with anybody very well anywhere. And there are, we need to prioritize. You need to see where you are. We need to look at the budget and say what's working, what's not, and what can we make changes at to not have to do anything with our tax base.
Right. And while there hasn't been a real estate tax increase in that time, in 2021, the township did institute the stormwater management fee. How do you feel that has worked out over these past 2 years, and would you change anything?
Well, as I've been out knocking on doors and talking to folks, that's the number one thing that comes to mind first is the township's instituted it. They haven't done a good job. We haven't done a good job of explaining how the money's being used, how much is being collected, how much has been spent, what are we spending it on, and why are we doing it? If you're going to keep the stormwater fee, we need to explain what's going on with it. We need to show dollars in, dollars out, what's gained from it, what's lost from it. It's really been a closed book almost since it's been instituted. I would really want to see where we are. And one of those things I've heard and I've thought about is we might need to sunset that thing out over time. In other words, if we're collecting X amount of dollars and we need to spend this much to meet state and federal regulations, then what are we doing with the rest of it? Or if we're spending it all, are we spending too much? So it's only been really in effect for a year in collection and spending. So it needs a lot of evaluation. The new board coming in January is going to have a lot of work to do on where the stormwater fees are, what it's being spent on, how do we talk with the citizens, with our taxpayer base, with the folks that are investing in it because they have to. What's going, they don't know. You hear a lot of wild stories out there, and we have not done a good job as a township explaining what that process is.
The township right now is looking at some changes to the ordinance governing what is known as the Terrace Streetscape District, which is essentially the West College corridor. And some of those changes include reducing building heights allowed. Is there anything, as developers are starting to, are continuing to look on the edges of State College, expanding further out, is there anything you would like to see happen in that area to shape how it develops?
I think a couple of things. One, again, we need to talk with the builders. They need to make some money while they're doing it, and we need to discuss with them if we're going to make big changes in size of buildings. That's going to affect what they can do. The other thing is we need to think outside the box. There's requirements and there's discussion on what's on those first, retail stuff on the first few floors. A lot of these buildings within the borough and even, other places, a lot of those retail and open space, there's nothing being done. Somehow we need to come up with a system, come up with a way to get businesses or get something in those first floors. That again would help the builder, would help the tax base, would help everyone. Whether we look at, say, well, it's not, the square footage doesn't have to be that much. If you get some dollars as opposed to $0, it makes more sense to have something in there. And we've got small businesses that are looking for places to land. Let's give them an opportunity to see whether they're going to pass or fail in a building, in a brick and mortar building, and maybe give opportunity to some of the small businesses to figure out if they want to move in, or give them a place to move in at a reduced cost to start with, and work our way in, so we can put some things in those open space, or in those lower spaces that aren't the living quarters or living spaces above. And the other thing on the whole West End corridor is the neighbor on the other side of the road. We need to talk with them a little bit. Being Penn State University, they own an awful lot of land on the other side, and you know, they don't play their cards very open with the township or anyone else when they're going to do things. And it'd be nice sometimes to know what they're thinking, so that it would help us as a township maybe manage what we're doing within the township as well. And I don't have a good answer to that other than some invitations, some talk, knocking on doors, and some telephone calls, and say, hey, we'd like to know, you know, what are you looking at over the next few years on some of the properties that you own in our township, and so that we can better serve you and our citizens to figure out what we need to do.
All right. What's your view on the township's relationship with the Center Region Council of Governments, and you know, how much value do you find in regional cooperation?
There needs to be as much as we can get. Again, shrinking dollars, they're all coming out of the same pocket. If we can support what COG's doing as much as we can as a township, and they can support us with, you know, mutual benefit to everybody. I think they do things that if we had to do them ourselves in the township, it would cost a lot more money. So I think, you know, there's mutual benefit to everyone. As Ferguson Township, we need to keep on top of our relationship with COG, participate in all the COG programs that we can, make sure we have our opinions as a township delivered to the COG, so that we're not, you know, second fiddle to something, or claim we don't know what's going on, or you know, getting taken advantage of maybe sometimes. I don't know, but yes, COG's important, and I think we need to make sure that our relationship with COG is a two-way street, that we're there knowing what's going on, benefiting from it. They're benefiting from the expertise of folks in Ferguson Township and what we can offer as well.
Right. We just have a few seconds left, so I'll give you this chance to share anything else you would like to with the voters.
I just would appreciate the opportunity to share some thoughts here today, and I just think that I'd like to bring a common sense approach to the board a little bit. I've worked professionally for years with committees, with boards, with funding, and I think I could bring a little bit of that expertise to the board, and I'm very willing to listen and talk with folks and hear their ideas and share their thoughts as a supervisor with the fellow supervisors and staff, and try to be a good conduit between the constituency of Ferguson Township and the board and staff. So looking forward to the opportunity to hopefully serve.
Thanks a lot, Ken.
Thank you, Jeff.
We've been talking with Ken Raney, Republican candidate for Ward 1 Supervisor in Ferguson Township. All candidates in this race have been invited to take part in a CNET interview. Election Day is Tuesday, November 7th, and you can also vote by mail. For more information, contact the Center County Elections Office or visit centercountyvotes.gov. I'm Jeff Rushton of statecollege.com. Thanks for joining us, and please be sure to vote.